Discipleship, and I want to remind us what a disciple is. This is the definition as a church that if you as a Christian get asked what a disciple is, it is this. Matthew 4:19, and he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Reminder, there's three parts going on here. It's three simple parts. The first one, follow me. This is our heads. This is when we start to understand and figure out who Jesus is the beginning of our relationship. Unfortunately, some people just stay here. It's like knowledge, 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 knowledge. I just need knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. But it doesn't translate into the next part, which is, I will make you. This is where Jesus starts shifting you in your heart, in your soul. He starts transforming you from the inside out. You're saved by the creator of the universe. He's entered into your soul, into your very life, and your very being. He's not going to expect you or let you stay the same. So what you learn becomes present with you in Jesus, and he starts transforming you from the inside out. And the third one, I will make you fishers of men. This is our hands. We have a part to play. It's called the Great Commission. These three men that I just prayed for, they're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus on this mission. Some people, this mission is right here in town. Sometimes this mission is in the church. It's in your home. But for every single one of us, there's one area where the mission is exactly the same, and it is this, Matthew 28:19 through 20. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Now, just a reminder that before Jesus says this, he says, with all authority from heaven and earth, I'm telling you to do this. So we are called to engage in building in the kingdom of heaven by being disciples who make disciples. And this is not really a call to be a religious. It's not a call to expand the Christian club. It's Jesus' call for us to respond to joy and freedom that we get from a relationship with him. When we know that we're saved, when we know that we're secure in his salvation, that is joy. When the world is falling apart around you and you know where you're going and who you belong to, that is a firm foundation, that is a gift while we live in a sinful, fallen world. When we know that every single sin that we've committed or will commit, every atrocity that we've been a part of has been paid for, that Jesus has paid the price for every one of those sins, that's freedom. I'm not sitting here in my insecurity, in my discomfort, in my self-doubt, and sometimes loathing. I'm sitting here with joy and freedom because I am redeemed. That is what it means to be a Christian. Why would I not want to share that with somebody else? That's the invitation of the Great Commission. If you notice here in the Great Commission, it doesn't say, hey, go build this awesome American church that everybody likes and everybody feels comfortable with the right music and the right preaching and the right clothing and all the right ideas. No, it says, go make disciples. What is a disciple? Come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Here's joy and freedom that I give you. Pass it on to the nations. We've been commanded to love our neighbors, love God, love people, and make disciples. That's what joy and freedom is all about. See, Christianity wasn't designed to be a stagnant belief that we secretly observe in the quiet of our homes, that we just enjoy like on Sunday mornings. It wasn't created for that reason. It was meant to be a movement of people investing in something that goes beyond this life. We ask this question regularly: what is the return on my 10,000-year investment? The only investment that I could make in this life that goes beyond my death is people. We're invited to invest in people. Now, not all Christians are gifted to be leaders, but all Christians are gifted to make disciples. Jesus commanded us to do this. Jesus has gifted us for this. We're going to look at a parable in which Jesus gives us direction in what this looks like, where he's given us something and how we respond. Matthew 25:14 through 15 says, again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called his servants together, and he entrusted his money to them while he was gone. I always find this part interesting. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities, and then he left on his trip. It may remind us of last week where we talked about Jesus gifting us and giving us a certain life for investing in. And God gives each of us spiritual gifts so that we can come into a relationship with him Those gifts aren't meant for our own gain. They're meant for the benefit of others. Let's keep reading. After a long time, their master returned from the trip and called them to give an account to how they used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. This person recognized and used the gifts that God had given him for the kingdom's sake, and it was invested, and it multiplied. He took what he had, and God magnified it. And he engaged in what he was designed and created to do. And this is what the gospel, where it becomes rooted in our lives, when we take this investment that God has given us and we start pouring into it. Let's keep reading. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. The master said, Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. So these first 2 servants have this kind of similar experience, and they're given even more opportunity. Right? They're faithful, and Jesus praises them for their faithfulness, and then celebrate, and in that, there's even more responsibility. That's kind of like a return on your investment. You guys, if you're not familiar with the concept of compound interest, when you invest in something and eventually that interest starts pouring onto the interest and the interest and the interest, and that money just multiplies. This is when you put your bank into a long-term money into let's say a mutual fund, or I'm getting off topic here, but it just grows and grows and grows, eventually beyond anything you could possibly put in yourself. And that's what's happening here. Now, you could look at this and see the second person's like, well, I didn't receive as much as the first guy, right? Don't we do that? We compare ourselves to other people as Christians. And these 2 servants would be like, well, he got 5, I got 2. Fortunately, he doesn't in this case because they're focusing on kingdom instead of self. And in this moment, we're looking at this story where somebody is given less. We have to remember the story where Jesus is teaching all these people, and all of a sudden they're with these 5,000, and Jesus says it's time to feed them. They're hungry, and a little boy has 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they're supposed to feed 5,000 people. And this is all they've got. The disciples say, hey, we got this little boy. He's got these two fish and 5 loaves. How are we going to feed everybody? And they took what they had, and they gave it to Jesus, and he magnified it. That's the difference between kingdom and earthly. And earthly, I look at, well, this person has this, so therefore I couldn't possibly do that because that's them. Instead of looking at, here's what I have, Jesus. I'm bringing it to you. What can we do with it? I'm giving you what I've got. And that's the significance of these 2 different people. They both invest, and they could compare, but they don't because they're kingdom-focused. Unlike this last guy, let's take a look. Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back. But the master replied, You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops and didn't plant and gathered the crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least it could have gotten some interest on it. Now, does this sound relational or religious? It's kind of this challenging piece here. You didn't do anything with what I gave you. Sometimes this is how we treat God. You only gave me so much, God, so it's not like I could do anything with it. And then what happens? We end up being kind of resentful. God, this is what you gave me, so I'm just going to use it for myself. You didn't give me what that person has. It might be material, it might be spiritual. You might look at somebody and say, well, they're this kind of Christian, and Lord, you didn't give me that, so why bother? At least I showed up to church today. Or do we look around and say, well, these people's lives, they look so much better than mine. They're financially so much further ahead. That's why they're able to give. Lord, I can't give. You didn't give me enough. That's on you. And the problem is when we have this attitude, we end up resenting God, and we don't see the importance of who he is. And when we don't do that, when we don't see his importance, then we clearly aren't going to care about the Great Commission. So we end up in this place of not being thankful for who God made us to be, regardless of our circumstance. And then when we're in that situation, there's literally no way we're going to care about making disciples because we're not going to care about what God cares about. Because we end up comparing ourselves. The challenge for us here is do you have an earthly perspective or do you have an eternal kingdom perspective? What is the return on my 10,000-year investment? It's people. Then Jesus says something super convicting here, and this is the most challenging piece, I think, for us when it comes to our excuse for not making disciples. Jesus says, when we receive these gifts but do not do anything with them, or we don't use them for Him, we are wicked, lazy servants. So I'm going to turn this around and make it kind of uncomfortable for just a second. So if somebody comes to me and says, I'm not qualified to be a mentor, my thought is like, no, you are. As a Christian, He said, go and make disciples of all nations. He has qualified you, which we will get into that later. He's saying, gather up your loaves and fish, come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. He didn't say, come and follow me, and you make yourself fishers of men. He said, come and follow me, and I will make you. I have gifted you. Jesus has prepared you for such a time as this. The problem is, myself included, we get caught up in earthly, worldly, instead of kingdom. Our investment in people is the Great Commission. It's where the rubber meets the road in our faith. It's our Christian walk. We're all flawed, we're all messy, but we're all called to make disciples. And here at Lakeview, we think this is best done through mentoring. Point number 1, disciple making is best done through mentoring, if you didn't see that one coming. Now, let me just point out, we get some pushback on this when we bring this up, but I'm going to also point out that you're not pushing back on Lakeview Church, or you're not pushing back on me, you're pushing back on Jesus. What is going on in your heart that you are resistant to follow this command He's given you? It could be plenty of things. We're going to talk through some of them today, and next week we'll dig in some more. But one that we generally hear is that it's like people are difficult. I was like, okay, that is true. I can't argue with that. Remember we promised that if you go to a small group, somebody's going to say something stupid? If you're involved in a mentor relationship, there are going to be problems. There's going to be trouble. But one of the more interesting pushbacks that I get is when people, maybe you've heard this, people come to church and they ask, am I being fed at this church? People ask that a lot. You know, surprisingly, the demographic that says that the most are people who are 40 plus and typically have been Christians for a long time. They're the ones who say that. And I will say, for seekers and new believers, it is the church's job to feed them. But for seasoned Christians, like I always have this vision of like a mama bird like chewing up the food and like vomiting it down their throat, right? It's gross. But once you reach a certain point in your life, you know where the fridge is, you know where the plate is, you know where the fork and knife is, cut it yourself. Cut it yourself. It's a pastor's job and the church's job on Sunday morning to feed the new believers because they're in this part of come and follow me. They're learning who Jesus is, and they're in this part of trusting Him that He will make you into fishers of men who are now involved in it. And the reality is, it's not a pastor's job to feed seasoned Christians. It's our job to equip them. Like, hey, I want to go kill this bison, Phil. I'm like, I'm going to introduce you to a guy named Dick Fisher. He knows how to do that. He's going to help you do that. And then you're going to kill that bison, and you're going to eat it, and whoa, you ate some food. And I didn't feed it to you. In fact, I wasn't the one who taught you. It was another person. The whole thing here is mentoring is this thing that we need to do. And though we go and say, hey, I need to be fed, what we're actually saying is, I don't want to do the work. And in the songs we were singing this morning, it's like we're looking at this saying, like, Jesus, I want this relationship with you. But we're not saying, Jesus, I want to do anything. I want to be a participant in it. I love what was said during the spiritual moment when Darren, our piano player, was sharing, like, when we just go through the motions, there's not much going on. This is how Jesus has invited us to be engaged in this relationship with Him. Through the Great Commission, God leverages our life to pour into others. And you know what happens when you pour out? Jesus pours in. It's super interesting that if you want to get fed, the best way to do it is by doing the Great Commission and pouring into someone else. Now, I understand that there's this revolutionary part for us where we go like, well, Phil, this is really challenging. People are difficult. Let's read what Ephesians 4:14 and 15 says. As a result, we are no longer to be children. You know who gets milk? You know who's fed milk? Babies. Now I drink milk because it's great, even though I'm lactose intolerant. But we feed babies, adults eat meat. We are no longer to be children, tossed here and there by the waves, carried about by every wind of doctrine, whatever sounds good to me, whatever makes me feel good about today, by the trickery of people, by craftiness or deceitful scheming. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who's the head of the body of church. This verse describes a mature believer, somebody who's connecting with somebody and saying, hey, I know you, I'm praying for you, and I also see this struggle in your life. See this blind spot where you're either sinning against yourself, against God, or you're hurting somebody else. I'm here for you. Here's the truth. The problem is with Christianity, as I've seen it, when we speak the truth, it's like, I'm going to hit you with this Bible in the head, and then walk away and say, Lord, I did my job. You speak the truth in love. Point number 2. Mentoring is the best way to go from learning truth to living truth. How? How is that possible? How is it possible to do that? Because when I'm mentoring somebody, I'm looking at their life, I'm investing them, I'm asking the Holy Spirit to give me guidance and direction for what to say to them, and while I'm saying something to them, guess what's happening? I'm saying something to myself. You know what happens sometimes? They ask me questions I don't know the answer to. Then what happens? I learn. Being mentored was amazing because my mentor would often challenge me and hold me to this higher standard in my life, not one that was religious, but one that was like, Phil, is this who you want to be? Is this where you feel Jesus is leading you? And sometimes I would just like dig my heels and be like, yes. I'm not moving and I don't want to move right now. And my mentor would just say, okay, I'll pray for you. But he never quit on me. We look at Jesus and he gives us the ultimate example of mentoring. How many disciples did he have? 12? Of those 12, he had 3. Jesus was always relationally involved with them, walking with them. They said stupid stuff. At one point, it was like, Jesus, who's going to be the greatest of us? Which one of us gets to be the Lord Conqueror in your commanding army? And she's like, oh my goodness, guys, you're missing the point. But he didn't go, you're dumb, you're out. Think about this. The entire 3 years of his ministry, he knew Judas was going to betray him. And yet he stayed with him. Jesus mentored. He cared for the people, and he worked with them. Here's the thing. He loved them. He did life with them. He asked them and answered questions. He showed them the gospel by how he lived and through how he treated the messiest of people. And that's exactly what Jesus has commanded us to do. Point number 3, you are qualified to be a mentor. Just like the servants at the beginning of this sermon, God has given you a treasure. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. God has given you a treasure and wants you to invest it. Not all Christians are called to be leaders, but all Christians are called to make disciples. You don't have to stand up front to make disciples. You don't have to play guitar and sing to make disciples. You don't have to teach in Sunday school to make disciples. But as a believer, as a Christian, you get to make disciples. You're qualified. Because Jesus himself calls all of us to make disciples or mentors, he also qualifies us. Have you ever heard the phrase, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called? We're messy. We're screwed up. It's not because God gave us this brain that we have everything figured out. It's not because we've memorized a zillion Bible verses. It's not because we're following Jesus perfectly. It's because he died for me. I have him living inside of me. I have joy and I have freedom, and I get to share that with somebody else to help them experience joy and freedom. I don't have to. Jesus isn't going to kick me out of heaven if I don't. But to have a stronger relationship with him, he's invited me to participate in this way. Now, I will make one caveat to this whole thing. There's one place where I think mentoring is a little bit challenging, and that's when there's somebody who's blatantly living in unrepentant sin. It doesn't mean Jesus can't use them, because he still does. That's a cool thing about Jesus. You can push him away, you can reject him, and he still pursues you. Like, talk about joy. I can be the biggest idiot in the world rejecting Jesus like nobody else, and he still comes and chases me down. But when you're living a life that's blatant sin, unrepentant sin, you don't always make the best mentor in those moments. Sometimes in those moments, it's time for you to have a little bit of a, what we call come to Jesus moment, hit rock bottom and get back up and then trust him. That's the one caveat. But outside of that, God, it's funny, the robotic baby's crying. I was trying not to pay attention to it, but I know it's a robotic baby, so it's not even a real baby. Poor Summer. But it's unlikely that I guess poor parents who have their kids who have to bring this robotic baby home. I was thinking about that as you guys were sharing this morning. I'm going off for just a second, sorry. They're like, we've got this baby at home. I was like, that's gotta suck. You're like, you're done. And then this high school teacher's like, here you go, deal with it again. I'm like, no, did my part. It's like when I'm a grandparent, it's like, no, that baby goes home with you, so I don't have to, I'm sleeping. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Let's talk about this. This is a 2-week series I'm entering. I'm opening the book on this for us today, where I want you as a Christian to walk away from this today and going, I am called to mentor people. Now, getting into this relationship is going to be a little bit tricky because here in America, especially in the Christian church, we haven't really talked about this much. We talk about making disciples, but then there's no guidance on it. Heavily next week, we're going to talk about major guidance on this, and I'm going to tell you some of it's super uncomfortable. Because you have a good mentor, they ask you uncomfortable questions. And we'll talk about why that is today, but I'm just going to open this up a little bit for us. So here's 5 pointers on to jump into mentoring. The first one, the best way to start is to start. I'm going to give you a real practical thing to do. We sometimes struggle with prayer and listening to God. If you're like me, I do. For most of my life, I'm like, is that God I'm hearing? Is that my own voice? Am I hearing nothing? And what I've learned is that when I'm praying, God speaks to me through my thoughts. And you go, okay, Phil, how do you know it's your thought or God's thought? Well, because in my thoughts, it usually involves me not serving or caring for anybody else but myself. In God's thoughts, it's usually a direction and a pointing and a thought towards someone else. And I promise you, if you take a moment and say, hey, Jesus, will you guide me to a person? And I'm just going to shut up for a minute and just be quiet. And then you start going, okay, what names are popping into my head? And if you're also like me with the ADHD issues, you start thinking about something else, your mind is an undisciplined child. You need to take control of it and just like knock that out of there. You don't need to be thinking about penguins and that lack of knees. You just don't. You just focus, okay, God, no, who? And you know what happens? He'll give you a name. And that might not be right away who you call, but you say, okay, I'm just going to pray for that person. What's going to go wrong with this? This person's name popped in my head. It's I'll use Jory Dunn as an example. His name pops in my head. I'm just going to pray for him. It doesn't mean I'm entering into a mentor relationship, but I'm just going to pray for him and see where God takes that. But then I might just go, hey, Jory, you want to get together for coffee? When you start, you just start, and it starts relationally. You don't need to make it officially, hey, we're going to do mentoring right away. That actually feels really weird if you do that right away. But you spend time getting to know each other and connecting with each other. Maybe it's a physical meeting, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's a text. It doesn't have to be called mentoring right out of the gate. In fact, I would discourage you calling it mentoring right out of the gate, because once you've built that relationship, you can kind of tell whether that person's going to be a good fit or not. It's less about their qualifications. Remember we said you're all qualified, and more about whether there's a good relational connection. So this is where you get to know each other. But that always doesn't matter either. One of my mentors, him and I are different on almost everything except for Jesus. So it's amazing who God will use. The second thing, make mentoring a practical priority. Both priority and practical. If you're going to be involved in mentoring relationships, let's just say this. Maybe it's once a week you send a text or make a phone call. And once a month you get together in person. How many of us can do that? All of us can do that. One phone call, one text. Confession, I fail at that sometimes too. Probably more regularly. But I need to make it a priority. Number 3, this one is probably the hardest one. Never give up. It's never going to be perfect. Meetings get canceled. They end up being in these places where they're just messy. You get together and it's like, man, that was a difficult conversation. Or you try and connect with somebody and it's just like it's not working. We tried. So it's like, okay, well, I tried mentoring. Oh, Jesus, I tried your Great Commission. It didn't work for me, so, buried my gold in the sand until you came back. You see where I'm going with this? Never give up. It's going to be hard. Let's look at what Galatians 6:1 says towards this. Brothers and sisters, even if a person is caught in any wrongdoing, which that is going to happen with sinners, you who are spiritual are to what? To restore such a person in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourself so that you may not be tempted as well. Yeah, they're messy. The people we connect with, it's not easy. But we dig in and we just pour in, and we don't give up. We keep trying. Why? Because those who are spiritually mature are to restore such a person in spiritual gentleness, in a spirit of gentleness. And when it is hard and you don't feel like it's going anywhere, Galatians 6:9 says this, let's not become discouraged in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not become weary. This relationship's hard, yeah. What if it takes me 60 years? What? I was like thinking weeks, Phil. Well, let me tell you something. 60 years is a very small amount of time in the rest of your eternity. What is your return on your 10,000-year investment? It might take a while. Never give up. Number 4, this one's super simple. Let your meetings flow. Sometimes you don't have to get to every single meeting and be like, spiritual, immediately. Hit me with the Bible, Phil. Bam. Tell me where I suck at my faith. Sometimes it's okay just to talk about the Super Bowl. Sometimes it's okay just to talk about what's going on in your life and what's going on at work or something simple. Just let the meeting flow, especially in the beginning. That's where we need to start. Number 5, this one is probably the one you guys are going to look at me and say, Phil, you're an idiot. But hear me out. Mentoring is not accountability partners. There is no such thing as mutual mentoring. Why? Because mentoring comes with authority. When I'm in accountability partnership, that's actually fantastic. I'm in that with my friends. But you know what I always have? I have an escape plan. If this gets too uncomfortable, I'm bailing out. They get to know me too well and they say something I don't like, we're not friends anymore. Too much accountability. Mentoring steps underneath the Great Commission and says, I need to be a disciple while making disciples. I am giving this person permission to look at my life through the lens of a biblical authority. That also means a lot when you're the mentor. You're looking at their life through biblical authority, not your opinion. This is not counseling. You're not there to fix them. You're there to point them to the highest counselor. Get out of the way. But it's not the same as accountability partners. A mentor is here to evaluate and help you see your blind spots. They're not there. So think about this for your mentor and for you being a mentor. It is not my responsibility to ask you hard questions so that I can judge you and condemn you. Why? Because Jesus has already paid for it. But when I ask you those hard questions about the sin in your life, I'm also not asking you just so that we can just condone and say this is okay. Because why? Because sin is sin. It hurts you, it hurts God. Well, it doesn't hurt God, but it hurts your relationship with God, and it hurts other people. So I'm asking you these questions for what purpose then? If it's not to judge, if it's not to condone, because sin likes to sit in the darkness and Satan likes to keep it there. And Satan likes to tell you that this is what your worth and your value is. You're a loser, you're a sinner, you're a failure. And when somebody says, hey, what is that you're holding on to? What is that thing that you're doing that you shouldn't be? And you say it out loud and you bring it into the light. What happens? Jesus nails it to the cross. Takes it away, and the light burns it up. And then Satan can't use it against you anymore. And suddenly you experience freedom in a new way. As a mentor, you get to gift that to somebody. As a mentee, you get to experience that. If it's an accountability partner, the minute they start getting close to that deep thing that Satan's lying about, you're just like, no. And then you start ignoring number 3, which says never give up. I'm going to invite the band up and give you kind of the final piece of this. I am submitting myself to the biblical authority of God through another person. That's why mentoring is a little bit different. And now you're sitting here and going, whoa, Phil, I'm going back to the whole qualified thing. I don't know if I'm qualified because I can't be that authority. Let's just pause for a second. What does the Bible show us? 12 disciples who followed Jesus around for 3 years and still got it wrong when he went to the cross, except for John. What makes you qualified? Not you, Jesus. When it comes to mentoring, it's also one of the most growing, powerful, feeding things because you're not qualified to do it in an earthly sense. If you were, you wouldn't need Jesus. In fact, our worldly, earthly disqualification is what makes us qualified. Because if we could do it on our own, we'd be counselors, we'd be therapists, we'd be making all kinds of money off Gen Z right now. We're not. So therefore, what does it do? It forces me into the arms of Jesus. It forces me to trust God, the creator of the universe, to lead me in the discussion. I'm about to go meet with my mentee. They've got some hard things going on in their life. Oh, I got an idea. I'm going to pray about this. He says, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? I'll follow him. The bottom line is this. Jesus calls us into a mentor relationships and will qualify us as we trust him. We've only scratched the surface today, guys. One of my hopes is that here at Lakeview, we give you the tools, which we're going to hit on a lot next week, to do mentor relationships well. They're not necessarily easy. That's why we say you never give up. Meeting and connecting with people can be challenging, but sometimes we just need to start. My hope for today is at least you'll begin the process of praying what it means to be a mentor and what it means to be mentored, and step into the Great Commission that way. Let's pray.